Okay, so when you think about the oldest cities in the Americas, what immediately springs to mind?
Well, for most people, I think it's those, famous colonial towns,
Yeah.
places the Europeans
Right,
established.
exactly. Boston, maybe Mexico City, or some of those big capitals down in South America. That's kind of the default, isn't
It
it?
often is.
But what if I told you that the real story of cities here goes back thousands of years before that, that it basically rewrites the timeline?
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful idea, actually. And that's what we're digging into today. We're using this really comprehensive Wikipedia list of cities in the Americas sorted by when they were founded.
Okay.
And this list, well, it's our guide to unpack this history.
Uh-huh.
It reveals some, frankly, astonishing origins and stories of places sticking around for ages. Real endurance.
So our mission today is to go way beyond just the usual suspects. We're looking at the whole picture, right?
Exactly.
From these incredibly ancient indigenous communities that were thriving for millennia, all the way through to the first European footprints, and then even, modern planned cities from recent times.
Full spectrum.
I have to say, digging into this, I had a few moments where I was just like, wow, I did not know that. So yeah, get ready for some surprises because this timeline is packed with them.
Definitely.
Okay, let's dive in then. And seriously, you might need to forget what you thought you knew about the oldest cities. Because this list goes back, it goes back so far.
Yeah.
It almost feels unreal. We're talking dates that sound practically prehistoric.
They really do push the boundaries. We're talking about pre-Columbian settlement cities that existed long before Columbus, obviously.
Right.
Take the very earliest one on the list, Wyoming, Oregon in the U.S. The listed date is 13,000 BC.
13,000 BC.
13,000 BC. It's staggering. It points to people settling down, managing resources, building communities way back right near the end of the last ice age.
Wow, that just completely changes the picture of early human settlement over here.
It really does. And it's not alone.
So what other really ancient ones are there? Ones that make you rethink things?
Well, you've got Tlapacoya near Mexico City, dating back to 7,500 BC.
Okay, still incredibly old.
Oh, yeah. Then down in South America, the Puerto Hormiga culture near Cartagena, Colombia, shows signs of settled life from around 4,000 BC.
Right.
And then Peru. Peru is just phenomenal. You have the Norte Chico civilization with cities like Aspero around 3710 BC and the famous Corral from about 2627 BC.
Corral, yeah, I've heard of Corral. That was a major center, wasn't it?
Absolutely. These weren't just villages. We're talking sophisticated urban planning, big ceremonial buildings, complex societies, all thriving thousands of years ago. Well, parts of Europe were still in very early stages.
It really challenges that old idea that civilization started somewhere else and spread out.
Exactly. It shows multiple centers of complex urban life developing independently.
What gets me, too, is the sheer scale and sometimes the continuity of these indigenous cities. Like, you mentioned Cholula.
Ah, yes, Cholula in Puebla, Mexico. Founded around 800 BC, it's widely considered the oldest continuously inhabited city in Mexico, maybe even North America.
Continuously inhabited since 800 BC. That's almost 3,000 years.
It's incredible. Think about the changes it's seen, the empires that rose and fell around it, and yet people kept living there. It's resilience embodied.
Yeah.
And there are others with deep roots. Camonaljuyu in modern Guatemala City goes back to 1500 BC,
Okay.
and Flores in Pitan, Guatemala, which was the Itzamaya capital Nochbeten, that site has roots going back to maybe 900 BC and has been pretty much continuously occupied.
And we're not just talking about small towns, are we? Some of these were huge.
Oh, absolutely. Think about Teotihuacan near Mexico City from around 300 BC. That was a massive, influential metropolis. Or Mitla in Oaxaca from around 200 AD.
Right.
Up in the U.S., you have Cahokia and near modern St. Louis around 600 AD. That was the largest pre-Columbian city north of Mexico. Huge complex.
Cahokia, yeah, with those massive mounds.
Exactly. And then down in the Andes, Cusco, Peru, the heart of the Inca Empire, has foundations dating to around 1100 AD.
And of course, the big one, Tenochtitlan.
Tenochtitlan, yeah. Founded around 1325 AD, right in the middle of Lake Texcoco, probably the largest city in the Americas when the Spanish arrived. And it became, well, Mexico City.
That's a continuity of sorts, even with the conquest.
It is. And we should also mention the enduring Pueblo communities in the U.S. Southwest, places like Acoma Pueblo and Taos Pueblo in New Mexico, both with roots around 1000 AD. And Arabi, Arizona, maybe even earlier, around 1100 AD. These communities have persisted for centuries.
So the big takeaway from this first part is what?
I think it's simply that urban life, building cities, complex societies. It didn't just arrive here on European ships. It has this incredibly rich, deep, millennia-old history right here in the Americas.
Yeah.
Often with continuous settlement that rivals or even surpasses many places in the Old World. It really forces us to rethink those standard historical narratives.
Okay, so we've established these incredibly deep indigenous roots. Now, let's shift to that period that often dominates the story, the arrival of Europeans and the cities they founded.
Right. And this is where that term continuously inhabited becomes really crucial again.
Why is that?
Because there were early European presences that didn't last. The most famous example is probably L'Anse Meadows in Newfoundland, Canada.
The Viking site.
Exactly. Dated around 1001 AD. Likely Leif Erikson's crew. It's the oldest known European settlement, for sure. But it wasn't permanent. It was used for maybe a decade or two and then abandoned. Fascinating, but not a continuously inhabited city.
Okay, so a historical marker, but not a continuous urban thread.
Precisely. For that continuous thread, we need to jump forward almost 500 years to the quote-unquote age of discovery.
Right. Columbus and all that.
Yes. And even then, the very first attempts were fragile. La Cibolela in the Dominican Republic, founded in 1493, was the first proper European settlement of this era. But it only lasted until about 1500.
So abandoned quickly.
Yeah. Then Columbus himself founded Concepcion de la Vega, also in the DR, in 1494. But it had a rough history. Earthquakes, attacks. It got moved and refounded. Shows how precarious things were.
So where does the continuous European settlement actually begin?
That distinction goes to Santo Domingo, also in the Dominican Republic, founded in 1498 by Bartholomew Columbus, Christopher's brother.
1498. Okay.
And that one stuck. It's the oldest continuously inhabited European established settlement in the Americas. That's the anchor point for this wave of urbanism.
So Santo Domingo is like the ground zero for continuous European cities. Where did it spread from there?
Pretty quickly, actually, you see settlements popping up. Santa Maria la Antigua del Darien in Colombia, 1510. That's considered the first European city on the mainland of South America.
Okay.
Same year, 1510, Nombre de Dios in Panama becomes their oldest continuous European settlement. Then Baracoa in Cuba, 1511. Cumá in Venezuela, 1550.
We were moving fast.
They were. Veracruz in Mexico, 1519, also 1519. Panama City, the first European city on the Pacific coast, though it got sacked by pirates later and had to be resettled nearby, so its continuity is a bit complicated.
Right, continuity isn't always straightforward.
Definitely not.
And for the U.S., you mentioned San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Yes, San Juan, 1521. Crucially, it's the oldest continuously inhabited European established settlement in Puerto Rico and in the United States overall.
And the oldest state or territorial capital, too, right?
That's right. A very significant continuous legacy there.
Okay, so that's mostly Spanish expansion initially. What about other European powers in the 16th century?
Well, the Portuguese established São Vicente in Brazil in 1532. That's the oldest continuous European settlement in Brazil and the oldest Portuguese one in the Americas.
Okay, Brazil gets on the board.
Yep. Then the Spanish continued with Spanish Town in Jamaica, 1534. Santiago in Chile, 1541. Santiago del Estero in Argentina, 1553.
And then for the continental U.S.?
For the continental U.S., the oldest continuously inhabited European settlement is St. Augustine, Florida, founded by the Spanish in 1565.
St. Augustine. Right. People often think of Jamestown or Plymouth Rock, but St. Augustine is earlier.
Significantly earlier, yes.
Yeah.
It highlights that the initial European urban focus was heavily on the Caribbean, Central, and South America. The push into North America by other powers came a bit later. And again, that continuously inhabited part is key to understanding the real timeline.
Right. So moving into the 17th century, that's when the picture really starts to broaden, isn't it? More players getting involved, especially further north.
Absolutely. The British and French primarily start establishing more permanent footholds.
Okay, so who's next on the list for continuous settlement?
For the British, the claim goes to St. John's, Newfoundland in Canada. There were fishing stations earlier, but its formal claim and continuous settlement dates back to around 1583. That makes it the oldest continuous British settlement.
Okay, St. John's.
And the French. For the French, it's Tadoussac in Quebec, Canada. A trading post was set up in 1599, and it's considered the oldest continuously inhabited French settlement in the Americas.
Tadoussac. Got it. Now, what about the English in what becomes the U.S. Jamestown?
Yes, Jamestown, Virginia, 1607. That's the key one, the first permanent English settlement in the Americas. Important distinction from earlier failed attempts like Roanoke.
Okay, permanent is the key word there.
Exactly. Although interestingly, while Jamestown was first, it wasn't continuously inhabited in the same way some others were. But then you get places like St. George's, Bermuda, 1612. That's the oldest continuously inhabited English settlement overall in the Americas, being an island settlement.
Okay, Bermuda. And on the mainland.
Hopewell, Virginia, from 1613, holds the title for the oldest continuously inhabited English settlement in North America itself.
And out west, wasn't Santa Fe founded around then too?
Yes, Santa Fe, New Mexico, founded by the Spanish around 1610, and that's the oldest continuously inhabited state capital in the continental U.S.
Older than any of the East Coast capitals.
Older than the English ones, yes. Second oldest overall capital in the continental U.S. is Albany, New York, originally a Dutch fort from 1614, then English. It's the oldest U.S. settlement north of Virginia.
Albany, okay. Dutch first. So other powers are really getting in the game now.
Definitely. You see Old Road in St. Kitts and Nevis, 1624, notable as the first successful non-Spanish settlement in the Caribbean.
Right.
The Dutch founded New Amsterdam, now New York City, also in 1624. That's a great example of a city changing hands.
Yeah, New Amsterdam to New York. Classic story.
Then the French established Green Bay, Wisconsin, in 1634, their oldest continuous settlement in the U.S.
Huh?
The Dutch founded Willemstad, Curaçao, also 1634, their oldest in the Caribbean.
Okay.
Then you even get the Swedes. Wilmington, Delaware, 1638, was originally New Sweden, oldest continuous Swedish settlement.
Swedes in Delaware, huh? Didn't last long under Swedish rule, though.
No, but the settlement endured. And the Danes established Charlotte Amalie in the U.S. Virgin Islands in 1672. Even Nuuk in Greenland, 1728, started as a Danish Norse settlement called Godthab, building on earlier Norse presence.
Wow, okay. So it's a real mix of European powers carving out spots across the map by this point.
It really is.
So looking at all these founding stories, especially from the 16th and 17th centuries onwards, what patterns jump out? It's not just about planting a flag, is it?
Not at all. One thing you see constantly is cities growing out of military posts or forts. It makes sense. Security was paramount.
Like, you mean places that started as forts and became cities?
Exactly. Think Fort Dearborn. That was the seed for Chicago, right? Founded in 1803. Or Fort Nashboro, 1779, that became Nashville.
Right. Or Fort Lee becoming Charleston, West Virginia, 1788. So defense often came first.
Very often. Another pattern is instability. Cities weren't always founded and just stayed put. Some moved.
Moved, like the whole city.
Yeah. Leon, Nicaragua, for instance. It was moved in 1610 after earthquakes, and a volcanic eruption wrecked the original site. Camagüey in Cuba also moved inland in 1528, partly to escape pirates.
Wow, picking up and moving a whole town. That's drastic.
It shows the challenges they faced, and then there are the name changes. So many cities didn't start with the name they have now.
Oh, yeah. Give me some good examples.
Well, Atlanta, Georgia, started as Terminus because it was the end of a railroad line. Then it was Marthasville. It only became Atlanta in 1843.
Terminus, that's descriptive.
Or how about Regina, Saskatchewan in Canada? Its original spot was informally called Pile of Bones because of buffalo bones. Became Regina in 1882. Much nicer.
Pile of Bones. Okay, Regina was definitely an upgrade.
And Kitchener, Ontario used to be called Berlin, but the name was changed during World War I for obvious reasons. So cities evolve, move, get renamed. Their origins tell these complex stories.
Yeah, it's not just a date on a map. It's about purpose too, right? Gold rushes, trading posts, becoming capitals.
Absolutely. The reasons for founding are diverse. Gold towns, strategic river ports, administrative centers, and that leads us eventually into the more modern era of deliberately planned cities too.
Okay, so let's jump way forward now. We've covered ancient history, the colonial rush. What about the more recent cities, the late bloomers on this list, especially from the 19th and 20th centuries?
Right, because city founding didn't stop. And some of the places founded relatively recently are now huge major centers. It reflects different drivers like westward expansion in the U.S. and Canada, or completely modern planning ideas.
Give me some examples of surprisingly young major cities.
Well, think about Las Vegas, Nevada. Iconic city, right? Founded in 1911.
1911. Wow, that's much later than I'd have guessed.
Or Anchorage, Alaska, Alaska's biggest city. Founded 1914, basically as a railroad construction port.
Okay, early 20th century. Still feels quite recent in the grand scheme of things.
It is, but then you get the truly planned modern cities. The ultimate example is probably Brasilia.
Brazil's capital.
Exactly. Created pretty much from scratch out in the interior to be the national capital. Inaugurated in 1960. A bold, modernist statement.
Yeah, very distinctive design.
And then think about tourism drivers. Cancun, Mexico. developed specifically as a planned resort destination, starting basically in 1970.
Right.
It wasn't really a settlement before that.
Right, built for tourism.
And even more recently, Palmas, the capital of Tocantins state in Brazil, founded in 1989 after the new state was created. So brand new cities are still being established for specific reasons.
So this whole list, from 13,000 BC right up to 1989, it really shows urban development isn't a finished story, is it?
Not at all. It's this continuous dynamic process across the Americas. You see the deep indigenous foundations, then the waves of European colonization with all its complexities, the expansion across continents, and finally these deliberate acts of modern city creation. It's an ongoing story of growth, change, and sometimes reinvention.
What a journey, seriously. From Wyoming in 13,000 BC to Palmas in 1989, covering, I don't know, almost 15,000 years of settlement history.
It's pretty mind-boggling when you lay it out like that.
Yeah. And I think the biggest surprise, for me anyway, is just how deep that indigenous history runs. It's not just a prelude to European arrival. It's this vast parallel story of urbanism.
Absolutely. And seeing how that history intersects sometimes gets overwritten, but sometimes endures alongside the colonial and modern layers, it really does shift your perspective, doesn't it?
It does. So what's the big insight we should take away from this deep dive into founding dates?
I think it's that cities aren't just static points on a map with a single origin story. They're living things, really, historical entities.
Right.
They carry these layers of history stories, of continuity, yes, but also of abandonment, of resilience through conquest or disaster, of transformation. Understanding where a city came from, whether it's an ancient site like Corral, a colonial port like Santo Domingo, a fort that became Chicago, or a planned capital like Brasilia. It just gives you a much richer way to see its present.
Yeah, it connects the past to the present in a really tangible way.
Exactly. It adds depth to the place.
So here's something to think about then. How might tracing this incredible journey, this multi-millennia story, from ancient sites to colonial outposts, military forts, and modern planned capitals, how might that change the way you look at the ground beneath your own feet? You know, the historical layers that shape the town or city you live in, and maybe our whole world today.